Food tells a story of people, places, and times gone by. In the 1960s, working class families faced tight budgets and long days, so dinner wasn't about extravagance. It was about stretching what you had, canned goods, leftover bread, a handful of noodles into something that fed everyone. These weren't meals you'd find in a cookbook with glossy photos. They were born from necessity, flavored with ingenuity, and served with a side of love. These meals aren't common today. They've faded like old radio tunes, but they deserve a spotlight. 25 cheap working class dinners from the 1960s that have faded into history. Monkey meat sandwiches. Monkey meat sandwiches were a 1960s lunchtime hero for cash-strapped families. The star? Canned corned beef, a holdover from World War II when it fed soldiers and civilians during rationing. Post-war, it stuck around, cheap, shelf-stable, and ready to go. You'd pop open a can, the metal lid giving that satisfying plink, and scoop out the salty, pinkish meat. With a fork, you'd mash it into a paste, blending in a big spoonful of mayonnaise for creaminess and a squirt of yellow mustard for a tangy zip. Spread it thick between 2 slices of soft white bread, think Wonder Bread, the kind that's squished in your hand, and you had a meal. Sometimes a slice of dill pickle or a handful of potato chips went on the side, adding a sour crunch or a salty snap. No cooking, no fuss, just a sandwich that came together in minutes. Moms loved it for its speed, kids loved it for its taste. It often showed up in lunchboxes, tucked next to an apple and a thermos of milk, fueling kids through schoolyard games. The name? Maybe a playful trick to get picky eaters to bite, or a nod to the mystery of canned meat. Nobody asked too many questions back then. Garbage plate casserole. The garbage plate hails from Rochester, New York, born at Nick Tahu Hots, a greasy spoon diner where late-night crowds devoured its chaotic glory. Macaroni salad, home fries, burger patties, all drowned in meat sauce, onions, and mustard. In the 1960s, home cooks took this wild plate and tamed it into a garbage plate casserole, a one-dish wonder for families watching every dime. It was the ultimate fridge cleaner, turning odds and ends into dinner. You'd start with a base, cooked macaroni or leftover potatoes, then pile on whatever protein you had. Ground beef, sliced hot dogs, maybe some bacon bits, toss in beans, a wilting carrot, or that half onion hiding in the crisper. Mix it all with a can of tomato sauce or gravy if you had it. Spread it in a dish and bake it till it bubbled. A squiggle of ketchup or hot sauce on top gave it that diner kick. Some sprinkled cheese or crushed crackers for a golden crust, but it wasn't fussy. Every family did it their way. Mayo and mustard spaghetti. Mayo and mustard spaghetti sounds like a kitchen mishap, but in the 1960s it was a budget-friendly lifesaver. Boil a pot of spaghetti, those long, thin strands were pennies a pound, drain it hot and toss it with a few tablespoons of mayonnaise and a generous squirt of yellow mustard. A splash of vinegar or a pinch of salt and pepper jazzed it up. Feeling fancy? Add canned peas or diced ham from a tin. The combo was odd but magic. Mayo's creamy richness hugged the noodles while mustard's tang sliced through, keeping it lively. This dish thrived on lean nights when the fridge was bare and payday was days away. Pasta was a staple, mayo and mustard didn't spoil, and together they made a meal in under 15 minutes. It wasn't gourmet, but it stuck to your ribs, a secret weapon for tired parents. Kids slurped it up, the slippery noodles a fun mess on their plates. Egg sauce on saltines. Egg sauce on saltines was a 1960s comfort dish for when the pantry was down to basics. It's a simple setup. A creamy white sauce, butter melted in a pan, flour whisked in to make a roux, then milk stirred until thick, mixed with chopped hard-boiled eggs. Pour that over a stack of saltine crackers and you've got dinner. Salt and pepper were musts, maybe a dash of paprika if you had it. The eggs gave it body, the crackers a crisp base that softened under the warm sauce. This was a go-to for meatless Fridays or when funds ran low. Eggs were cheap, crackers were always around, and butter stretched far. It was also a clever way to use up Easter eggs, their yolks crumbling into the sauce days after the hunt. The flavor was gentle, a hug on a plate, perfect for sick days or quiet evenings. Families savored its thrift, a reminder that humble ingredients could shine. Imagine a grandma in her kitchen, floral apron tied over a house dress, the stove's glow lighting her face, right? She melts butter, the sizzle filling the air, and stirs in flour with a wooden spoon worn smooth from years of use. Milk glugs from a bottle, thickening as she hums an old hymn. She chops eggs, hard-boiled from Sunday, and folds them in, the sauce turning velvety. Saltines crackle as she piles them on a plate, the sauce cascading over, softening the edges. Her grandson swings his legs at the table. Egg sauce again? She smiles. Always good, isn't it? He nods, scooping a bite, the crunch fading into creamy warmth. It's plain but perfect, a taste of her care. Slumgullian. Slumgullian's roots stretch back to the gold rush, a hobo stew of whatever scraps hobos scrounged. By the 1960s, it was a family staple: ground beef, macaroni, canned tomatoes, and onions simmered in one pot. No beef? Hot dogs or tuna worked, no macaroni. Rice or potatoes stepped in. Tomatoes could be fresh, canned, or a desperate squirt of ketchup. It was a free-for-all, a dish that laughed at recipes and thrived on what you had. Cheap and hearty, Slumgullian fed big families on small budgets. The name, maybe from slum, stew, and gullion, mud, was rough, but the taste was home. It bubbled on stoves in cramped kitchens, the steam carrying beefy, tomatoey goodness through the house. Every spoonful was a mix of textures: soft pasta, tender meat, chunky veggies, a meal that stuck with you. City chicken. City chicken sounds like poultry, but it's a 1960s trick. Pork or veal cubes skewered, breaded, and fried to mimic drumsticks. Chicken was pricey in urban areas back then, a luxury for Sunday dinners, while pork was the working man's meat. So families got crafty. Cut the meat into chunks, thread it onto wooden skewers, dip it in egg, roll it in breadcrumbs, sometimes spiced with paprika or garlic, and fry it golden. Baked versions work too, but frying gave that crisp, chicken-like crunch. Serve it with mashed potatoes and gravy, and you had a feast that felt upscale. This dish was a Depression-era holdover, still popular in the 60s for its thrift and flair. Kids loved the drumsticks, gnawing them like real chicken legs, while parents appreciated the savings. The pork stayed juicy inside its crunchy shell, a clever disguise that fooled no one but delighted everyone. Hoosier pie supper. Hoosier pie is Indiana's claim to fame, usually a sweet sugar cream pie. Cream, sugar, nutmeg in a flaky crust. For supper in the 60s, families flipped it savory, stuffing it with cheese, ham, or leftover veggies. The crust was still that lard-rich classic, rolled thin and baked crisp, but the filling turned hearty: shredded cheddar, diced ham from a can, maybe some peas or carrots. It was a Midwestern twist, turning a dessert into a meal when money was tight. This pie was a potluck star or a quick fix for drop-in guests. It used what was on hand, pantry staples and fridge scraps, baked into something warm and filling. The crust flaked apart, the filling oozed, blending salty and savory in every bite. A sprinkle of herbs or a dash of hot sauce might sneak in, depending on the cook. Soured corn soup. Soured corn soup was a farmstead gem, a tangy bowl of comfort from the 60s. It started with corn, fresh in summer, then preserved by fermenting slightly for winter. That sour edge was the magic. Simmer it with milk, a pat of butter, and a pinch of salt, and you had a creamy soup with a zesty kick. Some tossed in bacon for smokiness or potatoes for heft, stretching it further. It was a way to use every ear, even the ones past their prime. This dish was pure thrift, a holdover from leaner times when wasting food wasn't an option. The fermentation came from rural know-how. Let the corn sit just long enough, and it turned sharp. Perfect for soup. Served hot with a dollop of sour cream or a scatter of chives, it warmed you through. A taste of the harvest saved for gray days. Shrimp wiggle. Shrimp wiggle was a playful 60s dish. Shrimp and peas in a cream sauce, spooned over toast or biscuits. Canned shrimp was the key. Affordable even for tight budgets, a little luxury that didn't break the bank. You'd heat it with peas in a white sauce, butter, flour, milk, thick and smooth, seasoned with salt, pepper, maybe a pinch of nutmeg. Pour it over crispy toast points or a split biscuit, and it looked downright elegant, a pink and green medley in velvety white. It was a Sunday supper favorite or a dish for when company knocked. The name made kids giggle, but the taste won them over. Shrimp's briny pop, peas sweet burst, all wrapped in creamy comfort. It stretched a small can to feed a family, proof you could impress without excess. They dig in, the sauce soaking the bread, the shrimp tender, and the peas bright. Not bad for a dime's worth, her husband says, and they all nod, fork scraping. It's humble, but special, a little wiggle of joy in a tough week. Sweet potato scrapple. Sweet potato scrapple took the Pennsylvania Dutch classic, pork scraps and cornmeal, and gave it a southern twist with mashed sweet potatoes. In the 60s, it was a budget beauty. Cook the pork bits, think trimmings or neck bones, mix with cornmeal and sweet potato mash, season with salt and pepper, then form into loaves. Chill it, slice it, and fry it crisp. The sweet potatoes added a sugary depth to the savory pork, a golden crust hiding a soft orange-flecked center. Drizzle it with syrup or serve with applesauce, and it danced between breakfast and dinner. This was nose-to-tail eating, nothing wasted, everything savored. In the South, sweet potatoes were cheap and plentiful, making this a natural fit. It was hearty enough for a cold morning or a light supper, the frying pan sizzle a promise of something good. Floating island dinner, flip the dessert classic, meringue on custard into a savory 60s supper, whip egg whites stiff, poach them in a simmering broth, chicken, veggie, or just bouillon, and watch them puff into fluffy islands. Serve them over rice or noodles, the broth soaking in, maybe with a sprinkle of parsley or a dash of vinegar for zip. It was light, cheap, and leaned on eggs. Protein for pennies when meat was scarce. Perfect for hot summer nights, it didn't weigh you down. Families stretched it with whatever was around, leftover veggies, a bit of ham, making it a catch-all for odds and ends. The egg whites floated like clouds, delicate and airy, a gentle contrast to the hearty broth. Corn Dodgers. Corn Dodgers were 60s cornbread balls, a southern staple from pioneer days. Mix cornmeal, water, salt, maybe a pinch of sugar, form into patties or logs, and fry or bake them golden. They were cheap as dirt, stretching a sack of cornmeal into a side for beans, greens, or gravy. Kids loved their handheld size, dunking them in soup or molasses, the crisp outside giving way to a fluffy core. These were born from necessity. Corn was king in the South, and Dodgers kept hunger at bay. In the 60s, they paired with chili or stew, soaking up juices like edible sponges. Over a fire or in a skillet, they cooked fast, their toasty aroma a call to the table. Wesson Oil Potato Sizzler. Wesson Oil Potato Sizzler turned spuds into 60s gold. Slice potatoes thin, russets or whatever was in the sack, fry them in Wesson oil till they hissed and crisped, then dust with salt, pepper, maybe paprika or onion powder if you had it. Cheap and sizzling, they were a side for any meal or a main dish when meat was off the table. The oil, a pantry must, gave them a glossy sheen, the edges curling golden, the insides soft but firm. Potatoes were dirt cheap, and this dish made them sing. Crisp enough to crunch, hearty enough to satisfy. It was a meatless marvel for Fridays or a quick fix when the kids begged for snacks. The frying filled the house with a warm, oily scent, a promise of something hot and good. Picture a mom at the stove, skillet popping, potatoes flipping in hot oil. "Smells like a diner," her daughter calls, sneaking closer. "Sizzler's coming up," Mom says, piling them on a plate, steam rising. The family crowds the kitchen table, fingers shiny with oil, grabbing slices still hot enough to sting. "Better than fries," Dad declares, sprinkling extra salt. They eat fast, the crunch loud, the centers tender, a simple trick that turned a humble tuber into a treat. It's not much. Potatoes, oil, heat, but it's a 60s kitchen symphony, proof that little could be plenty. Pea fritters. Pea fritters turned canned peas into 60s gold. Mash them with flour, egg, and salt, then fry into crispy patties. The peas, a pantry staple, burst with green flavor inside a golden crust, soft yet firm. Serve them with ketchup, gravy, or sour cream, and they were a veggie hit. Even picky eaters couldn't resist. A pinch of pepper or onion powder might spice them up, depending on the cook. Cheap and quick, they made peas fun. Perfect for meatless days or as a side to stretch a meal. The frying pan popped with oil, the fritters sizzling into shape, their earthy scent pulling kids to the kitchen. It was thrift with a twist, turning a can into something special. Picture a dad at the stove, flipping fritters, the oil snapping. Pea pancakes? His daughter asks, peering up. Better, he grins, sliding one onto a plate with a ketchup swirl. She bites in, the crust cracking, the peas sweet and warm. More, she demands, and he laughs, frying another batch. The family crowds the table, fritters piled high, dipping and munching, the green flecks bright against the brown. Sneaky veggies, Mom whispers, and they all nod, hands greasy, smiles wide. It's simple. Peas, flour, heat, but it's clever. A 60s trick to feed and please. Cabbage pudding. Cabbage pudding was a 60s winter warmer. Cabbage baked into a savory pudding-like dish. Cook it down with onions till soft, mix with breadcrumbs, milk or cream, and maybe cheese, then bake till set. The cabbage turned tender, the top golden, a soft center hiding a slight crunch. Salt and pepper were key, a bit of bacon grease or nutmeg might sneak in for depth. It was a garden bounty saver, cheap when cabbage was plentiful, hearty when fresh veggies faded. Families loved its warmth, a cozy shield against cold nights, stretching a head of cabbage into a meal for all. Ketchup and egg noodles. Ketchup and egg noodles was a 60s quick fix. Boil wide egg noodles, toss them with ketchup, and call it dinner. Add butter for richness or cheese for goo, but the core was simple. Noodles and that sweet, tangy red sauce. Kids loved it, slurping the slippery strands, while parents leaned on its speed. Cheap noodles, a ketchup bottle always on hand, done in minutes. It was a last resort meal when the fridge echoed or a late night bite after overtime. Ketchup was king in the 60s, versatile, long-lasting, and this dish turned it into a star. Not healthy, but it filled bellies fast. Picture a college kid in a dim apartment, water boiling on a hot plate. Dinner, he mutters, draining noodles, squirting ketchup from a glass bottle, stirring till it coats every curl. His roommate stumbles in. That again? They laugh, eating straight from the pot, the noodles sticky and bright. Poor man's pasta, he shrugs, and they shovel it down, the sweet tang waking tired tongues. Back home, a mom might serve it to her brood, butter melting in. Quick supper, she calls. They twirl forks, ketchup smearing chins, a messy, happy chaos. It's basic, noodles, sauce, but it's a 60s snapshot. Thrift and taste in every bite. Cornflake tuna bake. Cornflake tuna bake was a 60s casserole classic, canned tuna, cream of mushroom soup, and a crunchy cornflake top. Mix tuna and soup, maybe some peas or celery, spread it in a dish, crush cornflakes with butter, and bake till golden. The flakes crisped up, contrasting the creamy, fishy filling, a texture party in every scoop. It was a church supper staple or a weeknight go-to, cheap, easy, and preppable ahead. Tuna tins were pennies, soup cans ubiquitous, and cornflakes added flair without cost. Families loved the crunch, kids the mild taste. Imagine a mom in a checkered apron sliding a casserole into the oven, cornflakes crackling as they brown. Tuna night? Her daughter asks, peeking. With a twist, Mom says, tapping the crispy top. The kitchen smells of warm soup and fish, the table set with mismatched plates. Dig in, Dad calls, scooping a steaming pile. They eat, the flakes snapping, the tuna soft, a humble dish that feels like a treat. Potluck tomorrow, Mom notes. This'll go fast. It's not fancy, just cans and cereal, but it's 60s comfort, a warm square of home. Breaded pig's feet. Breaded pig's feet was nose-to-tail 60s eating. Pig feet cleaned, breaded, and fried crisp. Boil them tender first, coat in egg and crumbs, then fry till golden, the meat gelatinous inside a crunchy shell. Serve with potatoes or sauerkraut, and it was a hearty, cheap feast. The breading added snap, the meat a rich, sticky bite. Nothing wasted, that was the ethos. Pig's feet were dirt cheap, a butcher's leftover turned treasure. It was a dish for those who knew how to stretch, a working class badge of honor. Picture a butcher's family, kitchen thick with frying oil's haze. Pig's feet tonight, Dad announces, flipping them in the pan, crumbs sizzling. His son wrinkles his nose. Feet. Best part, Dad insists, plating them, steam curling. They sit, the crust breaking under forks, the meat meltingly soft. Tastes like work paid off, Mom says, adding Kraut's tang. They eat, the richness filling them, the crunch a reward. Outside, the city hums, but here, it's quiet pride. Every bite a nod to thrift, a 60s lesson in making much from little. Potato pancakes. Potato pancakes brought Eastern European roots to 60s tables. Great potatoes mixed with egg and flour, fry crisp. Golden outside, soft inside. They paired with sour cream or applesauce, balancing savory and sweet. A few spuds stretched far, feeding a family for pennies, a comforting classic. They were holiday treats or everyday fillers, their sizzle a kitchen anthem. Potatoes were cheap, and frying made them special, a taste of heritage for immigrant families or anyone needing warmth. Imagine a grandma in a steamy kitchen, grating potatoes, her hands steady. Pancakes? Her grandson asks, sniffing the air. Hot ones, she says, dropping batter in oil, the edges crisping fast. She stacks them high, sour cream dolloped on, the scent earthy and warm. Like the old country, she murmurs, passing plates. They eat, the crunch loud, the centers tender, applesauce dripping. Best supper, he declares, and she smiles, the pan still popping. It's simple, spuds, egg, heat, but it's love, a 60s bridge to roots and full bellies. Cracker crust pizza. Cracker crust pizza was a 60s pizza hack, saltines laid out as a crust, topped with sauce, cheese, maybe pepperoni or olives. Bake it till the cheese bubbled and you had a crunchy budget pie. Pizza was hot then, but delivery wasn't cheap. This let families join the craze with pantry stuff. It was a kid-friendly project. Everyone picked toppings, making it a game. The crackers crisped up, the sauce sank in. A quirky take that still satisfied. Picture a Saturday night. Mom and kids at the counter, saltines spread on a tray. My pizza, a son yells, piling cheese, his sister adding ham scraps. Bake it, Mom says, sliding it in, the oven humming. The kitchen smells of tomatoes and melting cheddar, the crackers toasting below. Ours is better, Dad brags, cutting squares, the crust snapping. They eat, laughing at the mess, the saltines holding up, a thrifty twist on a trend. It's not pizzeria stuff, just crackers and cans, but it's fun, a 60s family win. Corn cob soup. Corn cob soup was 60s farm smarts. Simmer cobs after kernels were cut, making a sweet broth. Add milk, butter, salt, maybe the kernels back in, and you had a light soup. A sprinkle of herbs or a cream drizzle fancied it up, but it was about using every bit. It stretched the harvest, a rural trick when corn was king. Cheap and summery, it turned waste into warmth, a bowl of thrift and flavor. Imagine a farmer's wife, cobs boiling, the kitchen humid with corn's ghost. Soup from nothing? Her husband asks, leaning in. From cobs, she corrects, stirring in milk, the broth turning gold. They sit, bowls steaming, a parsley fleck floating. Tastes like the field, he says, sipping deep. The kids slurp, the sweetness soft, the effort clear. It's basic, cobs, milk, heat, but it's clever. A 60s nod to making every ear count. Stretch chili. Stretch chili was 60s chili with a twist. Add beans, tomatoes, or breadcrumbs to make it feed more. Ground beef or scraps started it, then bulk it up, spices simmering long. It was cheap, hearty, and perfect with cornbread or crackers, a pot for big families or surprise guests. It was about volume. Stretch that meat, fill those bowls. The 60s loved chili, and this version kept it affordable, a smoky, warm hug for any crowd. Picture a potluck, a mom's chili steaming in a dented pot. Stretched it, she says, ladling it out. Beans plump, sauce thick. Plenty for all, a friend nods, grabbing cornbread. The room buzzes, spoons clinking, the chili rich despite its thrift. Back home, her kids scoop seconds. Best batch, they say, crumbs falling. It's not pure meat. just spice and stretch, but it shared a 60s feast of making do. These 25 dishes, pig's feet to prune whip, might sound wild now, but they were 60s lifelines. Working class families turned scraps into suppers with grit and a grin. Tension built with every tight paycheck, but the climax was simple. A table full, a night one. They're gone now, faded like old aprons, but they whisper a truth. Good food isn't about cost, it's about care. Your next bite might hold a story too.